Now they're extremely important, and we don't have the theory of this stuff at all. So the idea of this dynamically generated torus, we only have it in Hamiltonian systems where symplectic symmetry enforces them, but I expect them to be totally general. I expect just like you have periodic orbits, there should be also relative periodic orbit solutions of dynamics which are not consequence of a continuous symmetry, but a property of the dynamics itself. It's an open research project. My intuition is that the tori, they're robust if they're hyperbolic. So whenever you have a torus, n torus, you expect n eigenvalues to be marginal, because the n things that just move points on the torus, but they don't leave. One that we already know is one in time. So whenever you have toroidal solution that's invariant in time, there has to be one tangent direction, which is just the velocity, which is tangent to the torus hemiplace. But then there have to be tangent direction for every other dimension of the torus. So there is a Fenichel theory that says that if this is a partially hyperbolic torus, so that all other eigenvalues are going in and out of it, hyperbolically in and out, then it's a robust, smooth object. You might be worrying about resonances. You might be worrying that as you go on this torus, your winding around torus could be commensurate with the period, in which case Birkhoff theory of breakup of resonances comes in. So whenever you have this, we show in very elementary nonlinear dynamics that we expect a chain of stable and unstable periodic orbits if the winding number around torus is a rational number. So that means I can have a solution that's actually periodic. But generically, don't expect this. So then you can ask yourself, is this torus very fragile? Because in every open neighborhood, I have nearby rational windings. So you could think, oh, that's terrible. Now, Fenichel says that it's robust. As you move your parameters through rationals, this kind of torus doesn't fall apart. As you change your parameters smoothly, so the winding on the torus has to go through rationals. If it's a robust torus, for example, if you have a periodic orbit, short periodic orbit of some simple system like Lorentz, then you have a vast parameter range where that orbit exists. You just slightly deform until it hits something and it bifurcates or something. But there are always open ranges in which, so you also like this tori to exist. You know in your mind that there could be resonances that you're supposed to worry about them. In Hamiltonian dynamics, this is a big deal. That's why we have asteroid belt. The resonances of heavy planets are creating this whole thing. Whenever you have a resonance, what happens is if you make a perturbation and you have infinite time to wait, if you have a resonance situation, perturbation is coherent. If you have irrational numbers, then as you go around, you get kicked around, but you might believe that on average, you're not kicked. The average effect of this thing is random, and you still stay on the same torus. If you have a resonant torus, then every time you come back, this guy kicks you in the same direction. Tuck. And that's why they're so fragile. They fall apart. That's why you get unstable things when you go through resonances. So now you can ask yourself, okay, for these other tori that we don't have good examples of. We computed some for Kuramoto-Shivashinsky, but they're not very impressive. They should be there because you can see all kinds of quasi-periodic behaviors in these systems. But they're much harder to compute than periodic orbits, because if you're doing by variational method, you have to make a kind of fishnet stocking. That's your guess for the torus. And then you have to make sure that this in continuum limit is really there. Hard enough for periodic orbit. So there is a great school of which we have one of the leading experts at Georgia Tech, Rafael Della Llave. They're epsilon people, so they tend to screw around close to bifurcation point. That's a nice place to be. You had something that was periodic orbit, but went through whole bifurcation. So now it's a little pipe. around what used to be periodic orbit, and you can prove beautiful results about that, and it's quite hard. Now, this is not how turbulence and chaos works. You want to find things that are far away from each other and very unstable, but embedded in turbulence. So what we would like to have is a parabola. Parabola is not absolute perturbation of anything. It's a humongous thing. It takes unit interval and stretches it by factor 2 and folds it onto itself. Nothing absolute about it. Totally different from studying almost stable systems which are going a little bit unstable. This is viciously unstable all the time, and you have a totally different theory, which is Smale horseshoes. It's complementary to integrable system. So what they look at integrable solutions and they screw them up a little bit, like Km. It's integrable, but then you put the weak perturbation, it's going to still survive and that. We would like to produce unstable partial hyperbolic tori, which are equivalent of a 2-orbit for a parabola. 2-cycle is as far as possible from the both fixed points of the parabola. But it's totally crucial in understanding the dynamics. And that's first approximation to chaotic dynamics, because it tells you how you go from neighborhood to neighborhood. So we would like to find big tori like that, which do violent things. They're very unstable, but they're really important because the transport problem is that sometimes you approach them, you go around them until you find unstable direction, and you go away again. But they're bigger. See, the problem in higher dimensions, in 1 dimension, line and point is very important because it's border. In 2 dimensions, you have to work rather hard to find a point. So the robust object is a line. Solutions which are loops in 2 dimensions or open lines in 2 dimensions are what partition 2-dimensional space. In 3 dimensions, it's very hard to find a point. You throw a boomerang that's going to hit the point, it's very hard. But if you had something as codimension 1, dimension 2, then you have to pierce it. So that's why we study KMs and stuff like that, because they actually partition the state space. They're important. So you have an intuition that when you go to higher dimensions, you care about codimension objects. You don't care if you're in 100 dimensions. It's extremely impossible to find a point by wandering around. Random walk can't do it because random walk is 2-dimensional. Random walk in any dimension is actually 2-dimensional, Hausdorff-dimensional. So probability of coming back is zilch. It's only in a plane that they have a finite probability of coming back. In higher dimensions, forget it. So that's our intuition. But the only thing we know how to work are points and lines at the moment. We don't even know how to work with tori. But the real theory should say, when I'm in 100 dimensions, the most important thing is a 99-dimensional object. If I can find some invariant object, stable, unstable, then that really tells me as I go from here, I have to get glued to this guy because it's huge. Then the next important object is 1 dimension less. So in periodic orbit theory, it looks like it's periodic orbit. But I've shown you when you have symmetries, you get contributions of tori, because relative periodic orbit for continuous symmetry is not a line. It's actually torus. It's only when you slice it that it becomes a line. So in that particular case, because symmetries are global and very robust, you can produce 3 torus because you have either Euclidean symmetry or you have a SO3 symmetry or something. So you have solutions which have that symmetry, but we slice them twice, and then we get a point in Poincaré section. But there we cheat because these symmetries are very easy. Cutting circles generated by a global symmetry is very easy because it has no dynamical component. It's really some kind of circle, even though it's a little bit hard for us to do it well. But so even the trace formulas, they look like they live on periodic orbits, but they don't. They get contributions from all other invariant objects. Currently, we're only able to pull out periodic orbits and the symmetry-induced tori, n tori. And sometimes, when we work hard, we produce a dynamical torus. I mean, something that's really property of dynamics. Intuitively, they should exist, because as you screw up systems, the things that should, I mean, intuition is like this. When you change nonlinearities, when you change stuff in the system, and you look at local stability of any solution, as you make system more unstable, more and more eigenvalues of stability makes this cross unity. So now, if I'm high dimensions and I haven't screwed up my system, I'll have very few unstable directions and lots of stable directions. Because intuition, at least for dissipative dynamics, this is a good intuition. For Hamiltonian dynamics, you have to think about it twice, but for dissipative, it's good intuition. We care about the codimension counted by unstable directions in a problem. What exists in that space could be any torus, any structure larger than, doesn't have to be a fixed point. You can find fixed points, but they might be totally irrelevant. You can find periodic orbits, but they might be totally isolated. So you really want to find big stuff. Our methods are so embarrassingly primitive to find even periodic orbits that we don't dare to do it. So when we work on fluid dynamics, we are working in the space where it's a high-dimensional problem, but we're looking very close to onset of turbulence, where the inertial manifold, the part where dynamics really happens, is really low-dimensional. So our cheap ideas about periodic orbits can still be used because they're not so bad, because effective dimension is low. So this is a research topic, and we should start counting with Newton. Newton had a hard time producing a theory of the moon. He could never do it. Turns out it's very hard. Still today, it's a serious thing. We are still working on this. I mean, we are progressing. 19th century was amazing. What we have done in end of 20th century is totally amazing. New ideas are being created all the time. So you have your work cut out for you.